Check one, two, three. Hey everybody, it's Michael Helms, also known as Michael the Sound Guy, and this is the Location Sound Podcast. You know, each episode we talk with location sound mixers, boom ops, and other industry pros about the various aspects of recording sound on location, whether it's for feature and independent films, TV commercials, interviews, any time where dialogue from actors is recorded. I started my career in the recording studios in New York City with some of the big artists back in the day, and later on projects for networks like HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, and the Cartoon Network. As time went by, I got out of the studio and began working in production sound. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, thanks for joining us. So my guest today is production sound mixer and boom op based out of Jamaica. Please welcome Saeed Thomas.
Hey.
So, hey, Saeed, welcome.
Thanks.
All right, Saeed, we like to start off the show by asking, when you're working as a location sound mixer, what's in your basic audio kit? Just a rundown from your mics to mixer to power distribution and everything in between.
So when I'm working as a location sound mixer, I usually use sound devices. Sound devices is my go-to mixers. I have a 633. It really depends. Sometimes I've used the F4, the Zoom F4, but most times it's the sound devices. Lectrosonics is always my go-to for microphones. In terms of lavs, it's really between M152. I do like the sound of them, or COS-11d. In terms of power distribution, the regular MP batteries, BDS system, and for monitoring purposes, I usually use the Lectrosonic IFB. And then, of course, you have regular stickies, the little fandangles that usually most location mixers work with.
Okay. When you say stickies, like the Rycote Stickies?
Yeah, like Rycote Stickies. Oh, and of course, for boom, I use, well, it depends. I like 416 when it comes on to like everyday shoots. They're a little bit more sturdy, but for inside or for internal purposes, I use the Sennheiser MKH50.
What are some of the projects that you work on in Jamaica?
Well, most of the projects that we work on out here are mostly corporate. I've had great experience in maybe all forms of sound in Jamaica, so ranging from PA system to location sound to broadcast. So we do have our own local football league that we cover. But in terms of location mixing, it's mostly like corporate advertisements, small features. I wouldn't say film because our film industry isn't huge, but we do have like when a foreign production, or foreign in this case would be US or England or Europe. So they would come to Jamaica, and in a case like that, or foreign documentary, I would then get the experience to do those type of jobs.
Okay. Now, what would be a basic setup with some of these projects?
It really depends. I've worked from really minimal to really expansive. Maybe my most expansive job would have been a virtual reality documentary for Major Lazer. And the recording sound, I had to record ambisonic. And that was a little bit different. But maybe on average, the basic setup would be maybe 2 lavs, mixer, boom, and something to monitor, something to give the director for him to monitor the audio. And of course, timecode.
Well, what timecode boxes do you like to use?
I've used Lockit. But yeah, most times I just sync to the camera, and maybe I check back. And if I see that it begins to run off time, then I'll resync.
So you would just take a timecode cable out of your mixer and jam sync to the camera?
And jam sync, yeah.
Okay. For example, in Jamaica, you don't necessarily have access to all these great rental houses and places for purchasing gear. How does that usually work when you want to get gear?
It's really difficult. So for the bigger productions, we definitely have to rent from the US. I have rented from Thai Audio or TAI Audio. But yeah, for the bigger productions, we definitely have to go to maybe the closest source, which would be Miami or Florida. So what I'm trying to do actually is to build up my portfolio and my gear so I can be that source in Jamaica. So as it stands, I'm not sure if many other people out here owns like a 63 and an F4. So little by little, I'm trying to build the gear that I have in order to be more able to provide for sound in Jamaica, especially because the knowledge of sound out here isn't very expansive. I'm trying with the availability of gear. I'm trying to also convince producers and directors that hey, Sound Devices 63 is a really important piece of gear, and you hear the difference. The metadata you can record on it is extremely useful. Time code systems, etc., etc.
I was looking at your IMDb account, and it talked about you had worked on a project called Cross My Heart.
Yeah,
And you were a boom op and sound mixer on that.
yeah, I was.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that project was about and what you did on set?
Sure. So Cross My Heart was a short film done by Sanken COS-11d. She's an NYU graduate, and it was actually the film that she was doing, I think, for her postgrad. And she came down and I got called to be a boom op, and I was a boom up on the first day. It was actually a female that was a production mixer, Raven, and essentially she was using, was it an FP33?
Yes, the Shure mixers.
Yeah, sure, FP33. And I told her, hey, I actually have a sound devices at my disposal, and she got so excited. She's like, really, 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 I need to bring it the next day. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm more than willing to. And basically, I brought it the next day, and I ended up mixing on the following day. But it was a really exciting experience. As I said, film isn't a huge industry in Jamaica, so just these little experiences, I get the experience and I learn. Not even more so about the technology, because learning the mixer itself is important, but with experience and with reading the manual and with YouTubing, I you can get pretty versed with the mixer pretty quickly. But it's more about just understanding the roles on set and understanding teamwork on set and understanding probably like what you exactly need to do as a production mixer, or what a sound editor or a sound designer would want to hear or want to be recorded, and what notes to take. So those are the little details that I definitely learned on that.
Okay. Now, were there any particular challenges you faced when you were working on this project?
Well, it was a very long day, but I think that's kind of typical in film. Maybe the biggest challenge was trying to record dialogue near a waterfall. So it ended up being wild sound, which turned out to be pretty okay. But there are no extreme challenges that I can think of right now. Most things are pretty straightforward, and of course, when I carried the sound devices, it even got a little bit easier in terms of recording multi-track.
Okay. Do you have any particular insights into how it is working on a project in Jamaica versus working in the United States?
Well, I haven't worked on a project in the United States. The most I've done is I've toured, but that's as a front of house engineer in Europe. However, I do see differences between Jamaican crews, or the experience on a Jamaican production in comparison to production from another country, such as the United States. I think the the biggest one is maybe budget and of course the gear. So I feel like in Jamaica, our troubleshooting skills are interesting in terms of in Jamaica we say something called make we hand and turn fashion, meaning with the little we have, we basically try and maximize from the little we have. So we have a knack for creating big things out of small opportunities. So that's definitely where I can say there's a big difference, meaning we will make something work out of nothing. However, there are certain other things that I do realize. We don't have a strict policy with maybe overtime, so our work hours are a little bit longer. In terms of work ethic and just understanding roles in film, I feel as if the United States are far more superior in regards to that. But yeah, there are not many differences. I feel as if once you have an appreciation for your craft and once you've done a lot of research, the only thing stopping you maybe is experience. So maybe the biggest difference is the experience between the United States and Jamaica.
Yeah, for example, when you are on set and say you had a situation where you needed to come up with a solution and maybe you didn't have all the equipment or tools you needed, what would be a good example of solving the problem in a unique way?
There's no standout example for me now in location sound, but I can think of one in broadcast. So in broadcast, we usually try and route the audio to the playback machines for when they're doing replay, for the audio to come across as clean and clear. So the replay audio should always be crystal clear, and it should always be what you as a A1 want the viewers to hear. I remember when I just started, we didn't have anything to route the audio directly to our playback machines, and essentially what I had to do was I had to use a snake and an audio snake, and I had to basically run the audio directly from my board. I was using an M7CL Yamaha, and I had to route it to the cameras, which was a little bit more work, but it ended up working. And that's maybe just an example of, that's maybe a true example of lack of resources, but having little resources and having to make it work. So when you routed the audio, I'm not sure if you're understanding me, routing the audio, so running the cable straight into the camera channel, ensure that the audio came down the camera line, which was then brought back into the playback machine.
Okay. Yeah, no, there's always interesting solutions that we have to figure out on set, and sometimes it's not necessarily the obvious one. It's something, you kind of go around a certain way to try to make it work. So that's good.
Maybe I can think of a few more, but in instances I've had to bring wireless mics closer to the source in order for there not to be any dropout, because we don't have, well, many times it's changing now slowly because equipment is getting more accessible, but prior, many times we didn't have the resources to have proper antennas, so things like that.
So just being much closer to the transmitters and receivers.
Transmitter, yeah, exactly. Transmitter and receivers.
Okay. So what is one of the most interesting projects you've ever done?
To me, the most memorable project I've done was the one I mentioned before, was the Major Lazer documentary, virtual reality. I had never recorded ambisonic audio before, and I remember when I got the job, I was actually recording it. So it was two crews. There was an A crew and a B crew, and they assigned me to the second unit, which was the B crew. And I worked closely with an audio mixer whose name is Ben Adams. He's out of California. And essentially, I did like a one-day crash course in learning ambisonic audio. I did my research, but of course, nothing beats the underground experience. the gears we used on that project were sound field microphones, Zoom H2N, sound devices 744T, and Zoom F4 and Zoom F8. It's not as difficult as maybe when I initially researched it. When I initially researched it, I was like, wow, this is like a really new field of audio. And wow, I got a little bit nervous, but then being there and just understanding the general rules of audio, I was able to apply it, and it turned out to be a very fun shoot.
Interesting. So what's a typical setup when it comes to ambisonic microphones? Like how many tracks are you recording to, and just the overall setup?
Well, the overall setup is, so it depends on the microphone. The sound field has a breakout cable which gives you 4 channels, and you have to have a mixer that can record 4 mic channels phantom. And the key to ambisonic is that all gains have to be locked on the same volume. So it's great when you have a mixer that you can link the channels. So typically it would be the microphone, which would be either a sound field. I know Sennheiser makes one now. The mixer, which would be, as I said, it was a 744T, or the Zoom F4 and Zoom F8 can work because the channels are able to be linked and they can accept mic phantom on all channels. I couldn't use it on my sound devices 633 because channels 4, 5, and 6, they only take line. But also you have some other gear. So there's a Zoom H2N, which is a straight ambisonic recorder. It has the option to record stereo XY ambisonic, which is the 4 channels or the 4 pickups from the microphones. And even since then, I was so intrigued by it that I bought the Zoom H2N. I wanted to buy the sound field, but of course we don't really do ambisonic recording out here. We don't really do VR out here. So I don't think it would have been a wise investment, but I did buy the Zoom H2N, and even since then I use it a lot for my own purposes. So like when Jamaica has a lot of beautiful spaces, and with beautiful spaces, of course, are beautiful sounds as well. So like if I'm on a hike, or if I go into a waterfall, or if I go to the beach, or just a random environment, I walk with the Zoom H2N and just record some sounds. It's really interesting.
I agree. I have a Zoom H5, and I carry it with me everywhere I go. And it's always helpful to have something like that. At a moment's notice, you can break it out.
Yeah, of course.
So that's good. We always ask, what was your worst on-set experience?
I remember when I just started, I was using the FP33, the Shure, and I was connected to a Sony EX3, and I think I underestimated how quick I needed to be on set. And of course, I don't know if this is the experience in America, but in Jamaica, everyone hates to wait on an audio person. Everyone hates to wait on location sound. So it was, I think the energy got pretty bad pretty quickly, because I was still trying to figure out, this is when I just started. I was still trying to figure out line and mic. I was still trying to organize my cables. I think I probably took a little while in micing the person. And when I mic them, I started to hear a little rubbing noise. So when we started, it'd be like, hey, cut! And I go and say, hey, audio issues, and I go and try and fix the mic. And I got the bad stares from the DP and the director, and we're like, hey, does this guy really know what he's doing? But yeah, thankfully they did understand I was new, and the DP did come and speak to me, and he was like, hey, you need to kind of prep your kit from before, and we don't really want to be on set waiting for you to organize the cables. And I learned very quickly. As a matter of fact, I learned right after that. Maybe another bad experience was with a few shoots with wireless, with RF hits. Those are always a little bit troublesome. I definitely know that when I record in the city areas in Jamaica, I have a little bit of RF problems sometimes. So especially when it hasn't happened recently, but especially when I just started out when I used to have RF problems. I think most of the issues I've had are not necessarily location, but maybe broadcast. It was a real steep learning curve for me for broadcast. I remember when I just started, and I was on A2 for like 3 or 4 months. And what happened was that the A1 had to leave, and we were doing our local football or our local soccer series, and they kind of just threw me in there, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really just learning. But yeah, I remember that particular match, that first match that I did, I had RF problems on the handle mics. I probably wasn't as composed as I should have been. So I remember we are supposed to play a background track. Yeah, the jack was pulled out from the laptop, and the producer starts to yell out, track, audio, where's the track? Where's the track? I was like, oh my gosh. So I go up with the fader, and there's no tracks, and I realized that the jack is pulled out, and instead of muting the channel, I just went bam, and I pushed in the jack, and it went bam on air. And then the director was like, what the I was like, yeah, that may have been the one, probably the worst experience. And of course, they have been lucky because people have been very lenient. I think especially because I started out as a young audio tech, so they kind of were understanding of the little mistakes that I did make, and I got chances, and of course my experience grew over time.
Yeah, that's good. It's nice when people, they know you're new, they know you're just starting out, and you don't have a lot of knowledge yet, and it's nice when they don't rough you up too much.
Yeah. I did get the rough up because I remember being called in a meeting the day after, and they were like, do you get nervous? Are you okay? What is it? How do you prepare? And whatever. And I kind of had to just take a step back, and I did a lot more research. I questioned the A1s that I knew, because there are not many A1s out here. So there are not many people initially I could have reached out to. Of course, with more experience and with the world being smaller because of social media and forums and all of these things, it's much easier. Especially when I just started, in terms of just finding someone else in Jamaica. It probably was just a few that I was able to call and say, hey, what do you prepare? What exactly should I look out for? And of course, experience, as I said, experience is nothing teaches you more than experience.
That's good. We always also have to ask, have you ever forgotten any equipment when you showed up on set?
Yeah. So that when I first started that same exact shoot. So what it was a television series that airs on our local free to air. And so that first shoot that I told you that the DP had to be waiting on me, around 2 weeks after that, we were rushing out the morning, and I think I forgot my boom. I forgot my boom at the office, and I had to work it with the labs. And it was a little bit difficult because the clothing on one other person was a little bit troublesome. But yeah, I think other than that, the most I may forget is maybe little things, maybe a particular sticky or a scissors. I've forgotten my scissors a couple times. But no, most, like, especially since I've bought my own kit, it kind of just stays together. And I have my Pelican case, so I kind of just has everything. So when I used to work for other people, and especially, and had to be getting gear, I used to forget things a lot more. But now that I have my own set of equipment, it's a little bit easier to just roll with everything.
Now, with you had mentioned Rycote Stickies for expendables. Are there any other expendables you like to use, or do you come up with any kind of special solutions, since it's not always easy to replenish your supplies?
I use Dr. Scholl's. I use Moleskin. I also use just regular double-sided tape so if my Rycote Stickies are finished today and I can't get to ship it from Miami for tomorrow and I will shoot tomorrow, I might just go to my local pharmacy and get some double-sided tape and ensure they're like accurately placed. That's key for me. Accurately placed on the mic and cut neat. And most times it works.
Now, do you notice a difference in time schedule? You know, when it seems like when you go to the islands, it's always kind of laid back and relaxed, and we say we're going to start at 9, but maybe you don't start at 9. Do you have that kind of situation?
Yeah, man. That's definitely a part of our culture. Our value of time, it may not be as important to us as maybe first world countries, I should say. And our Jamaica is a little bit laid back. What's interesting though is that I've seen two extremes. I've seen instances where nothing runs on time and everybody is just like chilling, even though we're late. And a big part of that, I think, as well, is the fact that many people don't pay overtime, or so it's not charged on the client or the producer to be late or to have crew there for very long hours. But I've seen the other extreme where a foreign crew would come down, and or even some local productions. It really depends on who you're working with. But I've seen where the producer and the director is really strapped for time. They need to get these shots within these particular hours, and everyone is just on point. So many times I think it really depends on the personnel and the experience the personnel has. Most likely, if you have experience with foreign crews and foreign productions, you will be more appreciative of time. But yeah, no, I've definitely seen that, and it is. I hate to admit it, but I have to admit it. It is a part of our culture to be a little bit laid back.
Yeah, today actually we were filming and we only had our actors until 6:30, and then we kind of got behind schedule, and so we were trying to make up time. So it can get a little stressful as you try to catch up and make up if things get out of whack. So
Yeah.
now, how do you usually get your jobs? Or is it just word of mouth in Jamaica?
Well, the industry is pretty small, I have to say. Maybe out here there are around, don't quote me on this, but there are maybe around 7 or 8 location sound mixers. So once your name is out there, and once you have the gear, and once you do good work, once you're reliable and record clean audio, you will get called. I guess that's basically what I've always tried to do. I've always tried to be reliable. I've always tried to stay on top of the game in terms of, especially out here, in terms of gear and in terms of knowledge of audio. And I think your work speaks for itself. So as I continue working, it's basically word of mouth from there. I'm not too bad with social media. I think social media has gotten me a couple jobs. I think that's a definite difference between maybe me and some other location audio mixers. I probably use social media a lot more, but it's not something I live on to say, hey, this is primarily how I get my jobs. Most of my jobs are probably word of mouth.
Okay. When it comes to payment, do you usually get paid like right after the job finishes, or do you have to wait 30 days, or how does that usually work?
Well, I send an invoice for like 2 weeks. Typically, it's maybe 30 days. It really depends on the client. You have some clients that do pay you like right after the job is finished. Of course, I do understand economy. I do understand the Jamaican economy. And I understand that not every production and not every client will be able to pay you as soon as the job is finished. Because many times they are also waiting on payment. So I try to be as lenient as I possibly can, but of course, business is business, right? So I try not to wait past 30 days. After 30 days, it becomes an issue.
Okay. Now, how have you seen the business change since when you started to now?
Yeah, I think I entered the industry in Jamaica at a very specific time. It's right when analog was converting to, so most analog technology was now becoming digital. And I think many of the older techs or older location mixers or older engineers started to have a little bit of trouble moving from analog to digital. So they're brilliant when it comes on to just the knowledge of audio. But I think the biggest change for me was entering it right as the digital started to take over. So as I got a decent understanding of using analog technology, but then entering it in the digital world, I quickly learned devices and equipment much easier than many other people. But that may be to me the biggest change, the timing since I started to now. When I just started, most people used Shure FP33, and this is not that long ago. So, but this is just the advancement of technology in Jamaica. But this is not that long ago. And now, as a location mixer, especially with recorders being a little bit cheaper, like Zoom F4 and Zoom F8, you find more and more people start to invest in those type of recorders. So I think the biggest change is now the digital age.
It's kind of nice to hear how you deal with production challenges and how the industry is different, to some degree where you are.
Yeah, it is a big part of it is just culture and being able to afford certain things.
Yeah, it is expensive, buying equipment, even in the States. You
Definitely.
You have to be careful because you can incur a lot of expenses and a lot of debt if you trying to buy everything you think you need. So you kind of have to pace yourself and build as you go. So
yeah, definitely.
So Saeed, as we kind of wrap things up a little bit, do you have any final words of wisdom to share with the listeners?
I'd say to any young audio location mixer starting out, be humble and learn as much as you can. I think there's always something to learn because I feel as if every opportunity I've gotten working with someone, there's always a tip or a trick that I probably did not think of. So always be open to learning. Always do your research. I definitely know that being in a country like Jamaica where equipment isn't easily accessible, I actually had to go out and do my research. So I was forced to read that more or to watch that extra video. So always do your research. And the other thing is, especially for Jamaicans, try and always be punctual. Always try and be reliable because people do recognize good work and people will call you back.
What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, I am on social media. My name is Saeed Ojo, that's Saeed Ojo on Instagram. But you can always email me. My email address is soundojo.jm.com. So if anyone who's coming to Jamaica or if you're in a nearby country and you need good audio gear, you can always reach out to me. Sound Ojo is soundojo.jm@gmail.com.
That's great. So I just want to say thanks to Saeed Thomas for being on the show today. And and if you're doing some production in the Jamaica area, look him up.
Thanks, Mike.
And a big thanks to all of our listeners out there. If you'd like us to discuss a particular topic, please send us an email at locationsoundpodcast@gmail.com. We would love for you to subscribe and leave us a comment. We're available on Apple Podcasts and iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, remember, sound is half the picture.